리차드 도킨스, The God Delusion. The God Delusion. Natural selection as a consciousness raisor. In a science fiction starship, the astronauts were homesick. Just to think that as springtime back on Earth, you may not immediately see what's wrong with this. So deeply ingrained is the unconscious northern hemisphere chauvinism in those of us who live there, or even some who don't. Unconsciousness is exactly right. That's where consciousness raising comes in. It's for a deeper reason than gimmicky fun that in Australia and New Zealand you can buy maps of the world with the South Pole on top. What splendid consciousness result those maps would be pinned to the wall of our northern hemisphere classroom. Day after day, the children would be reminded that North is an arbitrary polarity which has no monopoly on up. The map would intrigue them as well as raise their consciousness. They'd go home and tell their parents, and by the way, give children something with which to surprise their parents is one of the greatest gifts a teacher can bestow. It was the feminist who raised my consciousness of the power of consciousness raising. Her story is obviously ridiculous, if only because of his in history has no etymological connection with the masculine pronoun. It's etymologically silly as the sucking in 1999 of a Washington officer whose used niggardly was held to give racial offense. But even daft example like niggardly or her story succeed in raising consciousness. Once we have smoothed our biological hackles and stopped laughing, her story showed us history from a different point of view. Gender, the pronouns notoriously are the front line of such consciousness raising. He or she must ask himself or herself whether his or her sense of style could even allow himself or herself to write like this. But if we can just get over the cloaking infidelity of the language, raise our consciousness to the sensitivity of half the human race. Mankind, the right of man, all men are created equal, one man, one vote. English too often seem to exclude women. When I was young, it never occurred to me that women might feel slightly by a pace like the future of men. During the intervening decades, we have all had our consciousness raised. Even though we'll still use man instead of human, do so with an air of self-consciousness apology or truculence, taking a stand for traditional language, even deliberately to rile feminists. All participants in the zeitgeist have had their consciousness raised, even those who choose to respond negatively by digging in their heels and redoubling the offense. Feminism shows us the power of consciousness raising, and I want to borrow the technique from natural selection. Natural selection not only explains the whole of life, it also raises our consciousness to the power of science to explain how organized complexity can emerge from simple beginnings without any deliberate guidance. A pure understanding of natural selection encourages us to move boldly into other fields. It arouses our suspicion in those other fields of the kind of false alternatives at once. In pre-Darwinian days, beguiled biology, who before Darwin could have guessed that something so apparently designed as a dragonfly's ring or an eagle's eye was really the end product of the long sequence of non-random but purely natural cause. Douglas Adams' moving and funny account of his own conversion to radical atheism. He insists on the radical of cause anybody should mistake him for an agnostic. His testimony to the power of Dionism as a consciousness raiser. I hope I shall be forgiven the self-indulgence that will become apparent in the following quotation. My excuse is the Douglas conversion by my earlier books, which did not set up to convert anyone, inspired me to dedicate to his memory this book, which does. In Memoriam Douglas Adams, 1953 to 2001. Isn't it enough to say that a garden is beautiful without hanging to believe that there are fairies at the bottom of it too? Douglas Adams. In an interview reprinted posthumously in the Sermon of Doubt, he was asked by a journalist how to become an atheist. He began his reply by explaining how he became an agnostic, and then proceeded. And I thought and thought and thought, but I just didn't have enough to go on, so I didn't really come to any resolution. I was extremely doubtful about the idea of God, but I just didn't know enough about anything to have a good working model of any other explanation for, well, life, the universe, and everything to put in its place. But I kept at it, and I kept reading, and I kept thinking. Sometime around my early 30s, I stumbled upon evolutionary biology, particularly in the form of the Richard Dawkins's book, The Selfish Gene, and then The Blind Watchmaker. And suddenly, on I think the second reading on The Selfish Gene, it all fell into place. It was a concept of such stunning simplicity, but it gave rise naturally to all of the infinity and baffling complexity of life. The awe which inspired in me made the awe that people talk about in respect of religious experience seems, frankly, silly beside it. I'd take the awe of understanding over the awe of ignorance any day. The concept of stunning simplicity that he had talking about was, of course, nothing to do with me. It was Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection, the ultimate scientific consciousness raiser. Douglas, I miss you. You are my cleverest, funniest, most open-minded, wittiest, tallest, and possibly only convert. I hope this book might have made you laugh, though not as much as you made me.